Welcome to the Radical Fabulatorium for round 2. Sarah, I appreciate you coming into the studio this time in person.
Thank you.
Yeah, last time we did it virtually.
Yeah.
Which is fun. The technology is fun, but it's good to be here in person.
It is. It's nice to be in a little studio and just check out all the music and all the equipment.
Yeah, surrounded by CDs, which is kind of like pretty retro these days.
I know. I love it, though. And tapes.
Tapes.
That's good.
Oddly enough, tapes are kind of like trending up again, especially in the punk rock world. Yeah.
I bet I've got a bucket full of tapes somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely some Sex Pistols.
Oh, nice.
Hanging around. Yeah,
nice. You fit right in here.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, I don't know if you know the band DOA.
Yes, I do.
So I'm kind of in talks with the singer Joey Shithead to come in this weekend because they're playing at Haven on Monday.
Oh, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
I need to tell my brothers. So my brothers were both in bands. One of the band's name was Society's Fault. This is like back in like early 90s.
Okay.
And the other one was, it'll come back to me, but they used to have a song called Flying Squirrel. Okay. And were you ever at the local uptown?
No.
Okay, before your time.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Aging myself. There was this really great place called The Local. It was on King Street. Okay. And a guy I went to high school with, I can picture him, can't think of his name right now. His father owned this empty space, and it used to be a shoe shop. Okay. And they basically just opened it up and they would have all ages shows.
Cool.
And like people from all over the country would come, like punk bands, and play. And there was like mosh pits, but it was all ages. So it was like I was in high school, or younger than that even, and was able to go and like hang out. And it was like local bands, and then they'd bring in like bands from Montreal and Toronto, and I think they even had some bands come up from the States and stuff at some points. And it was exciting. Really fun. It was really fun. So it was definitely, my brothers were the punk, like they had mohawks and, you know, safety pin their jeans. And
nice. That's fun.
Yeah, I was not that much into it. I danced. So it was a little bit, it was tricky to, you know, have a nose ring and go to ballet class.
Two worlds colliding. Yeah. Some punk rock ballet. Maybe that's something for someone out there to create, some punk rock ballet.
I think, yeah.
That's awesome. So the Haven show, again, like people are going to hear this after the show's already happened on July 1st, but that's an all ages show.
Cool.
So DOA, I mean, they've been at it since the 80s, so that's unbelievable. And I just found out recently the singer is a member, I think he's still an elected member of the Green Party.
Oh, really?
In British Columbia.
Oh, okay.
So can you imagine sitting in a council meeting with Joey Shithead sitting there?
I feel like that's how it should be.
Yeah,
you
really.
know? Like we need more like activist type, you know, I think of punk music as total like activism and anarchy and all of those great,
absolutely
great slogans.
And they're usually a lot of times the people in punk bands are well informed.
Right.
So
they should be.
Yeah. Their opinions matter.
Totally.
Anyway, that's a funny little tangent, punk rock tangent.
Yeah.
Everyone's got punk rock in them somewhere, I find, in the backgrounds.
I know. You just got to like dig through and
It's so funny.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's talk about maybe the Contemporary Dance Festival that's happening July 20th to 25th here in St. John, New Brunswick.
Yeah.
So that's an annual event that Connection Danceworks presents.
Yeah. So this is our 14th year with our festival.
Awesome.
Yeah. We started in 2010, very grassroots. Like it was in a small space, and we had some performers from Nova Scotia and Moncton, and we've grown. The festival's grown. This year we have artists coming from Spain. So we have international artists and national artists from within Canada, events. We have free events, outside events, and then main stage events. So we're going to be, I'm really excited about a specific project called the Community Movement Project, which we started about 5 years ago, where we'd bring in different choreographers or different dancers to work with community members. Sometimes we would they would perform in a site specific of something that they've created for a week with these outside choreographers. Sometimes it was just workshops. The past couple of years has been just primarily workshops.
Okay.
In the depth of the pandemic, we actually put together a video. So we put a call out to local community members just for dancing anywhere where they could or wanted to, and they would send it in to us, and we had it kind of edited, and we were using some music by Hilary Ladd.
Okay,
cool. So we had this really great dance video, all done by local performers, local dance or movers even. Just some people just sent in their feet moving, So it was like we had no idea who they were, but their feet were moving, and there was So we've always tried to really incorporate community and just get people moving, in any way that they can. So this year we're bringing in Daryl Tracy, who is a dance artist from Toronto, but he's originally from Moncton, New Brunswick. So we're proud to have him as our as a New Brunswicker, but he's worked with Connection for 10 years off and on since I met him in Toronto. And he's going to be coming and working with our community on a really beautiful piece. He's titled it Bricks and Mortar. He's working with the idea of, right now everything's the world is in such disarray, and people aren't gelling, and we're very conflicted, and we'll be doing what's called flocking.
Okay.
So flocking in dance is where movers come together in like a clump or close together, and there's a leader, but we don't necessarily always know who the leader is or going to be, and so it shifts from leader to leader, and the movers follow the movement. So the movement tends to be slow, but can sometimes be a little bit more abrupt, or it's more gestural. Movers are changing levels, but then they're also, maybe depending on the flocking, but sometimes they're traveling through space. The idea behind this bricks and mortar piece with the community is to just bring community members together. So it's going to be for all ages. Okay. We've got people for up to, age 75 and as young as 2 years old who are going to be participating in this, where its main sort of drive for the flocking is to find the sensitivity in listening and connecting and communicating without speaking with others. So you're doing this all in silence, and people are just moving together. It's really quite powerful. As an audience member, I've seen like large groups flocking. It's different than like a pop-up dance or a flash mob where the movement's choreographed and then everyone breaks into it, which can be really cool and powerful. Yep. This is much more sensitive, I would say, and a little bit more intimate, where the movers have an opportunity to work together briefly before they perform, but that it's never set. Nothing's ever really set. Okay. So it's always slightly improvised. Okay. And it's really just about the people who are moving. They're moving together, listening, being sensitive. And so it's really beautiful and quite a profound way to move and to think about the unity that people can find through movement. So that's going to happen. I'm really excited for that project. And that will happen at our site specific on the Wednesday, the July 24th. And then we'll also have 2 other site-specific performances happening throughout. So we'll start at Queen Square, and audience members can meet us there. We'll have one performance, and then they'll be led through maybe around Germain Street. We're not sure exactly of the total map, but we're hoping to drone it out.
The audience will be led?
The audience will be led. Yeah, the audience will be led down to, we'll finish at Area 506, where there'll be a final performance there, but they'll see probably 4 performances in total over the duration of that hour while we lead them down to Area 506. And so that the site-specific work with Daryl will happen, and people can actually sign up and participate in the workshops. But not be in the performance if they feel that they don't want to perform. Because there's always folks that are like, yes, I'm totally into perform, and others are like, no performing, but I want to be a part of this, this movement. So so that's happening on Wednesday, and then we've got on Tuesday at the BMO Theatre Space. We have our main stage performance. So I've created a work called Duets, where I'm working with 2 musicians, Andrew Reed Miller and Terry Huron from Montreal, and 2 dancers, Gina Grant and Chris Van Green. And we've been working, this work has been in the process for about 2 years now, on and off. And so I think we're finally ready to premiere the work and show it in its full. So I'm excited to be able to premiere it at this space. And it focuses a lot on memory and remembering, and how we use our devices as our memory, and as our source for information and even knowledge. But what would happen in this setting of this work is the idea that what happens when we no longer have those. We no longer have those devices. We don't have them to rely on anymore. So that's sort of the premise of the piece. And the musicians play live, which is really nice to have them sort of in this little world with the 2 dancers. Daryl Tracy is creating a duet as well on myself and Sydney Hallett. And that the focus of this work is really interesting. It's based on sort of the idea of Mori, which is death, but the capturing, all the photos and imaging that we capture with our phone, and how we sort of live through our phone, taking pictures or videos of the moment rather than experiencing it in real time. And then we go back and it's like we're capturing those moments, and then we look at them on our phone. It's like we're trying to bring them with us because we're afraid, we're the fear of death. And so we're trying to keep it at bay by capturing these moments and then trying to relive the experience through these photos, or videos. And, so that's been
interesting.
That'll be an interesting duet.
When you say duet, you're talking, is this a dance duet or are you talking music?
Yes, a dance duet. Yes. Sorry. And the title of my piece, this is, it already got really confusing with our producers. They were like, so there's how many duets and who's doing what? And there's crossover? What's going on? So the piece that I created is called Duets, with like a bracket, a parentheses around the S at the end. And then Daryl's piece is untitled at the moment. So, but it is a duet of 2 dancers.
Oh, got it. Okay. And
my piece is a duet with 2 musicians and 2 dancers, or it could be a musician and a dancer, or so. So that's another piece that's happening. And then we have First City School of Dance Young Company. They're performing a Daryl Tracy piece. It's heavy Daryl Tracy this year, but when you see the work, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. This is why. He's a master choreographer, and we're really excited to have him. And then we have EYAS Dance Project from Spain. And this is also a very special company. Seth Buckley, who is originally from St. John, and years ago, Seth and I danced together, and I briefly taught him in some ballet classes. He then went to Royal Winnipeg, and then from there he went to Europe, and he danced with various ballet companies and contemporary ballet companies in Europe, and settled in Spain with his partner Carlos, and they have this is their own company that they've been running for a number of years, and they do some really exciting work. So we're going to see a piece called Jupiter and Jaguar. And they're bringing in another female dance artist with them. And then they'll also be performing at the site specific, which will be very cool too. And it'll be something completely different. So, so that'll be a really exciting night. And then another very fun way to kind of finish off the festival is with what we're calling our cabaret social. And it's going to be at Haven Music Hall.
Nice.
So so we're excited to be there for this. And it's going to be 5 5-minute performances, and they'll happen on the small stage, and it's going to be a variety. So we want it to sort of emulate like a cabaret. So we've got hip hop, Bollywood, interpretive dance, contemporary dance, and tap. So it's going to be like a nice like snippet, and we'll have a host, and then afterward it'll just be socializing, which is kind of a unique thing where dance artists often, when we come together, it's like we don't we just work.
Okay.
We just do the shows, do the rehearsals, do the tech, do the, all the stuff that we have to do. But we generally, we have an after party, but that really is we just sit and eat really, really fast. And then we're like, we're all tired. Let's go home. Okay, good night. See you next time, whenever that happens. So this is kind of a nice opportunity for all of dance artists, but also audience members who come to the show to just talk, to network, to, see what's happening in other parts of the country and see what dance is going on and also just to socialize and be normal people too.
It can't just be all work.
Yeah, no, I know. Even though it sometimes feels like that's what it is. Yeah. So in a nutshell, that's our festival, and we're launching it on. Everything will be up on our socials on July 2nd. With all the details and links to register and tickets. Tickets are up and on sale right now for the BMO. Everything else is pay what you can and free. So. Yeah. Cool. So we just have the one really ticketed event, but everything else is choose your own adventure. Okay.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So a few questions popped up actually as you were speaking. First of all, I was kind of wondering in the the first thing you were explaining, site specific, does that mean like it's out in, what does that mean exactly?
Right. Yeah. So site specific is like a whole genre in dance.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It's kind of like this whole, it's its own thing, where basically the artists are creating work to a specific location, but it's not set in a theater. So it doesn't have the parameters and the safety nets of a theater with, it's this many dimensions, the sprung floor, the lights, the audience will only be here. What I love about site specific is that you can be in like a park and people can be watching you from their car, or they could be behind you. So in a way, when you're doing a site specific, there doesn't necessarily have to be where the audience has to be. They can be in a circle around you. They can be following you. We've done some really cool performances. Like one time we were at what's it called, Harbor Station or TD Station or whatever, before a hockey game. And we were performing with Andrew Reed Miller and a couple of other musicians, a piece called Circles. And they were up on the second floor. And there were 3 dancers. We were on the main floor and we were doing movement, but we were dancing to the music, which was above us at the beginning of a hockey game.
That's neat.
So it was really, some people literally walked in with their like foamy fingers and like put their foamy fingers in front of their eyes so that they walked by, didn't look at us. Like it's so, like this is what I love about site specific dance is some people get really uncomfortable with it. Like they're just having to look at it, to see it. Like, and I wonder if it's, it's like seeing the moving body, like seeing a body move. I think that makes people uncomfortable because a lot of people don't move their bodies and don't have kind of that agency over moving their bodies. So, and then others were just like totally like mesmerized and just stared and were, and then we even had one guy with his Tim Hortons coffee join in like and start to move with us because it was an improv. And so we were like, okay, this is happening. And he was like, oh, I'm going to, total St. Johner. And
I was going to ask, actually, that made me think like, that means the audience, if it's site specific, sounds like the audience can get involved if they so choose because you don't know what's going to happen.
100%. And we've totally had that happen. So that's sort of where that risk happened. That risk takes place in site specific work is that you can, and also I've done stuff for like third shift and where it'll be super foggy, typical St. John night, and it gets foggier as the night goes on. And then you're dancing and, dancing on turf. We were dancing on turf one year and it was like, whoa, I'm going to bail here. So, so things you have to constantly be adapting and shifting to the circumstances around you and also being aware of the people around you, sounds, noises, things going on. People sometimes will just walk through your performance, not even realizing that you're performing. Like, but I feel like that's the fun of site specific because it's like, you just don't know what's going to happen. And, it's invigorating and it can be really just really risky, but that makes it, I don't know, that makes it really, really fun. I enjoy that. But there's people who who only dedicate themselves, like dance artists who only dedicate themselves to site-specific work and creating work specific to site-specific and for the audience, and how the audience could engage or interpret the work, how they could, so there's so many different facets. We basically, with our festival, we set up site-specific in terms of there will be work that will happen that the audience will come and watch. We have had, I'm lying now. We have had performances where the performers will say, ask the audience to participate in different ways. And we've kind of had the gamut of it.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Is it usually like a choreographed piece, or is it kind of improv, or is it somewhere in between?
Usually it's somewhere in between. Okay. So I'm thinking last year we had 2 site-specific performances, one with Kelly Ray, local Kelly Ray, who had sought out kind of a specific setting and went down and was like kind of rehearsing, but wanted to engage with the audience. So had the audience follow her at different moments and that. So that kind of thing is definitely improv, because you don't know if the audience will actually follow you or not. Okay. And then other moments were definitely choreographed, different like sequences or whatever. And then, dancers can just kind of flow in between those two things. Okay. And then our second site-specific work by Chantal Baudouin from Moncton, it was fully choreographed. Okay. Like there was no room for any improvisation. It was set. And so, the setting had to be according to how she could coordinate her props and move. So it had to be a specific size and surface and all of that kind of stuff. But that's also considered a site specific. It happened in a different site other than a theater, in a venue, and then it was situated and kind of not created for that space, but could in essence be in that space. Because it was what am I trying to say? It was rehearsed. There we go. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So site specific is kind of like outside of a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very neat. Okay. Yeah. That's cool. That's just not something I'd ever thought about.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And it makes me wonder that you mentioned the last one was really there's no room for improv. To me, that makes me think like that's probably the moment an audience member chooses to interact.
Right.
When there's no room for it.
Right. Well, and I mean, most dance artists are pretty versed in improv anyway, so if that did happen, I'm sure, because I mean, even on like a stage with tech people and designers and everything, things happen, and you have to be able to just like step in and improv or make something up, or you never know what can happen when you get on stage.
That's that's half the excitement, I would imagine.
It is.
The other thing you mentioned in the beginning too, you referred to the flocking, but you also referred to them as movers and not dancers.
Right. Yeah.
So is there like what's the
I think I tend to refer to. I don't know. I guess maybe I say that because I just finished 3 weeks of teaching workshops to what I would consider movers. Okay, they're people. They're dancing. We're dancing, but we're moving our body not in a technical manner. Okay. I'm not asking the participants to do technical things like I would in a ballet class or in a set contemporary class where you're learning a style of technique. Okay. So also because of my own practice, my method that I use, the authentic movement method, we're movers. We're not dancers. Gotcha. We're movers. So it can be anyone. And I think that's also, I use that word so that it also is inclusive, that you don't have to be a dancer to do this. You can just move your body. Just as you said that, maybe like when you say dancing or come dancing or dance workshop, it kind of sounds like it implies that you already have some sort of skill or technique that you've practiced. Right. Moving. Okay. Right. I get it. Yeah. And so like all the workshops that Daryl will be leading are under the heading of the community movement workshop. So it's people who have no experience, just are curious or interested in like, how could I move my body? And learning new ways to move the body. And, yeah.
And how do you think that kind of movement philosophy or that kind of approach affects like people's self-image, or like, is that I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Because people must come into it scared, and some people come into it excited to experiment.
Yes.
But I'm kind of curious. Yeah, both.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like I just did these 3 weeks of workshops, and one was a movement class.
Okay.
And then the second one was a movement improv workshop or class. And definitely people coming in who are like, I've never done a dance class before. Mm-hmm. And they're like, they just their eyes get really big, and
Okay.
But I have to remember what your question was.
How it affects like their self-image,
right?
Or
yes,
maybe, I'm curious what your experience would be watching people deal with that, or how they've grown. Yeah,
I think that when we come into a dance studio, all of a sudden there's like our spines get a little taller, there's like mirrors on the wall, and there's a marley floor, and it's all sprung, and there's ballet bars. So it's like, there's just something people kind of like, ooh, and some people are like, oh, this is not for me, like, right away, but, hopefully they give it a try. But I think for, our self-image, I mean, moving our body is such a healthy healing tool, that if we can get over the mirrors and all of that, and, when I'm teaching, I always lead away from the mirrors, and we don't even look at them, and I'll do stuff with eyes closed, so we're not even, paying attention to others in the room.
Okay.
I think that if you can find the right teacher and the right sort of style of movement, it can be very invigorating and joyful. I mean, just seeing people, they were moving across the floor in twos, and I just gave them an idea of like, oh, we're going to move in spirals. Like, we're going to see what body parts can spiral as we're moving across the room in twos. And all of a sudden, when they became aware of one another, like, they would start smiling. And I've seen this happen time and time again, like with people when they start to move their bodies in a non-habitual way. Like, they just smile. People just smile. And so to me, that's the, I'm like, oh, okay, there's something happening for them that is pleasurable, that is exciting, that is new, that enjoyment. And I think that all plays into our self-image and feeling good in our bodies and moving in different ways. Yeah,
because sometimes it feels like movement, there's like, not the word's allowable is not the right word, but like acceptable movements in society. Like when you're out and about, there's ways you can move that are acceptable. Yeah. And if you stray from that path, you're supposed to feel embarrassed.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's why I think, when I said, like, when we perform in public spaces, there are people who are very uncomfortable and have to like look away, like they can't watch. And I think that that's what it is. I think that we've been sort of trained and messaged to only see our bodies as these, vessels that just take us from point A to point B. They only do certain things. They can only move in specific ways. It's kind of sad because I think a lot of people are physical, and rather than, we always get stuck in our heads, and so everything just goes up, all the energy, everything goes, blood flow goes into our head, and then we forget, we lose touch with our bodies. And I think, I don't know, going into like a darker place, this is where illness settles in, right? Like when we don't, when we aren't in touch with our bodies at all, injury and illness. And, so I think that movement, dance in whatever style can help us connect with ourselves, not just our physical body, but also our emotional and intellectual. And, I was even just doing these workshops, I was focused a lot on, I call them movement wellness workshop, because we were talking a lot about the nervous system and how movements, like asymmetrical movements with your arms actually helps to activate the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body, which works with, sorry, I keep hitting that.
Oh, yeah, don't worry about it.
Works with your, what what's the word I'm thinking of? Sorry, brain stopped. Well, with our parasympathetic nervous system, so our rest and digest and our emotional health, basically. And when we're doing these kinds of things, these weird asymmetrical, just moving our arms in different ways, your nervous system is like, oh, it starts to like click and turn on, and then changes can happen emotionally, and so. It's all connected.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It made me think of, I guess I haven't looked this up to fact check it, but I had heard that like there was a study done that even, like, when someone wins a race, they'll throw their hands in the air.
Yeah.
Well, even people that are visually impaired or blind will do it.
Yeah.
So trying to imply that movements this happens for a reason.
Yes.
Like the people that can see and raise their hands, they aren't doing it to show off that they're like raising their hands. It's just something that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting.
I thought that was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, and just as a sidebar, that years ago when I was living in Toronto, I worked with a woman who was doing movement classes for the visually impaired.
Oh, cool.
And so we had a group of visually impaired people who would come to the studio. We would meet them. First, we met them at like a Subway, and they would have their dogs, their eye-seeing dogs, and all of these things. And I just remember it was so sweet. There was this one woman, she was very petite, and she had this new dog. And she said, and as soon as she was like, the dog was like really, kind of antsy and like sort of like really like ready to go. And she said to us, we were on the streetcar getting close to where the studio was. And she just said, okay, when we get off the streetcar, my dog's going to run. So I'm going to have to run with my dog. So just tell me how many street lights it is before I have to go to the studio, So as soon as she got off I think her feet may have even left the ground. The dog was like taking her so fast. But, but it was like that in itself, like watching me being a sight person, watching people who are sightless move their bodies. It has stayed with me for many, many years. And I bring that back into when I'm working with movers now, who, haven't danced. It's very similar. Like the process with sight or without sight, we still sort of, everything's sort of turned inward. And then as soon as we start to almost ignite that nervous system and that, I don't know what gland it would be, but like something happens in the brain and we go, and we want to put our arms up and smile and
just be happy. I think I pulled up a quote here from Mary Whitehouse.
Oh, yes.
And maybe it summarizes it pretty well. It stuck out to me anyway. So she said, movement to be experienced has to be found in the body, not put on like a dress or coat. There is that in us which has moved from the very beginning. It is that which can liberate us.
Yeah.
I kind of like that quote.
Yeah. Mary Starks Whitehouse. Yeah.
She was involved with Authentic Movement, right?
Yes, she's the founder.
She's the founder. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that is in the method of Authentic Movement. It is you're waiting for an impulse, and the movers are moving with eyes closed. There is a witness to witness you and hold the space for the movers, but you're waiting for an impulse. And I think that we're again going back to like how we're trained to not move our bodies or only move them in specific ways. That impulse also has this like bad rap of being like a bad word, like, oh, you're impulsive. But if we stop our natural impulses, that also for movement, we become very rigid and stationary and kind of ill, ill at ease as well, just with ourselves, with our own body, because we don't know it. We don't understand the intricacies of our body, and we don't know our body intimately. So it is like waiting for that impulse and then trying it on and kind of taking it for a walk. Yeah.
Take it for a walk. I like that. You mentioned there's the witness and the mover. Yeah. The mover has their eyes closed.
Correct.
That's part of the process.
Yes.
So maybe you could just talk about both sides, like what's the what's the reason for the mover and their eyes closed, and what's the job of the witness? Or I'm not really sure what words to use, but
no, you're correct. Yeah, the mover. So the witness is there to hold the space, to keep the mover safe, the mover is keeping themselves safe.
Yeah.
But they're there to witness. I mean, I think that all humans need a witness. Mm-hmm. And in this practice, originally when Mary Stark's White House first began this practice, it was for therapy. And authentic movement is still used as a form of therapy, as a movement therapy. So the witness is basically the therapist. However, I am not a therapist, and I don't use it as therapy, though it can be. It can be it's very therapeutic, even without using it specifically for that therapy. But let me go back to the witness. So the witness holds the space, is there to witness the mover, and to also experience through or from the mover their own experience.
Okay.
So when the mover is moving with eyes closed, they're waiting for an impulse, and then they're following that impulse. Whatever kind of movement that ends up being. And sometimes it's sound as well. It accompanies the movement, or it's with or without the movement. And the challenging thing about being the mover is that as a dancer, we get stuck in our head of like, oh, is this okay? Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe I should show them what I can really do. Oh, this doesn't look very good. What do they see?
Yeah.
So we have to sort of remove ourselves from that judge and from the directing.
Okay.
So there's, we try not to direct, judge, or analyze what it is that we're doing, rather waiting for the impulse and following that impulse. And sometimes there's my mentor, Teddy Taffel, would say things like, what is this asking of me? Like, what is this movement asking of me? So sort of rhetorical questions that you can sort of have in your mind as you're moving, right?
Okay.
And always coming back to, am I directing this? Am I choreographing this? Am I, so there's this constant, though you're moving, there's definitely, you hit your inner judge so many times.
Okay.
And
because it'd be easy to kind of like pre-plan. You don't even notice that you're planning your movements.
Yes.
So it almost seems like it's a form of meditation in some way.
100%. Yes. And you know what? It's funny. Everyone that I've worked with always is like, oh, this feels like a meditation. I'm like, yes, it is. However, we are...
Maybe a mindfulness practice is a better way to put it.
A mindfulness practice, But I think about the difference between the meditation where maybe we have a mantra, or we have a singular thing that keeps us focused or on task of meditating.
Okay.
Whereas in this practice as mover, you don't know what's going to come up as an impulse.
Yeah.
So rather than, I have my mantra that I'm going to use in my meditation, that's my kind of my anchor. Mm-hmm. In this practice, the anchor is yourself, is excavating the impulse. And it can, So yes, I 100% agree that it does feel like a moving meditation or a mindfulness practice, but I feel that the more practice you have with it, and the deeper you allow yourself to go in the practice, I have found it is not a meditation. I'm a meditator, so it's like so I feel like I can compare this is a meditation. This is something different. But
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing I wondered too is as a witness, because the witness is watching this person potentially do strange movements, and I wonder and you mentioned people, the public they can't look at the dancer sometimes because they're probably, I would imagine, not that I'm a psychologist or anything, but that they're projecting their embarrassment onto the performers and assuming the performers should be embarrassed.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if that being a witness might be a way, if you recognize that as a fault or something you want to work on yourself, like being a witness can help you overcome that kind of embarrassment projection. Perhaps, if that's even a thing. I don't know.
No, totally. so I've been in the position of both mover and as witness, and when I create work, I use this practice, and I am the witness then, and I definitely, projection. That's so interesting, because that is sort of what is happening. It's like, even though the mover's moving with eyes closed, they could also be projecting as well as the witness, and even though the mover can't see the witness because their eyes are closed, there's still this, like, that collective unconscious that starts to kind of seep in. But I know myself as a witness, there are definitely moments where I start to distract, and I kind of go off in other areas in my mind.
Okay.
And I have to close my eyes and then open them again and see the movers, which can happen in movement. When you're a mover as well, you can just kind of drift off into another place and be just like, oh, this is really nice. I like this movement. Spinning my arms like this feels really great. And you can kind of get caught up. So it's a rigorous practice. Okay. It's a rigorous practice.
That's really interesting. Everything in my mind kind of comes back to music, and I can relate. Like, it makes me think of like performing vocals in a vocal booth, and you're singing a song, and that you're trying to be in the moment, and you think you're in the moment, but then all of a sudden you realize you're thinking, and you're like, well, I'm not in the moment if I'm literally talking to myself inside my head.
Yes, yeah.
So it's an interesting approach.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah.
It's challenging, but can be really rewarding and kind of enlightening.
That's really
getting
cool.
deep.
That's all right. It's fun. What do you think? So authentic movement. What do you think's, or contemporary dance even? It doesn't have to just be stuck on authentic movement, but like, what's the most difficult aspect or feature of it to like explain to a person?
That I'm not on So You Think You Can Dance? No, I'm just kidding. That it's not a studio recital.
Okay.
No.
Well, does that mean people take it too seriously sometimes, or?
No, just that general public who don't know anything about contemporary dance are like, oh, so you dance with a studio and you dance in a recital, and you're like, no,
like the pop dancers in music videos and stuff.
Right? Yes, yeah. It's like, no, it's this is my career. Like, this is and. Really, you make money doing that? Like, it's so kind of getting over. Sometimes I'm over it. I've been here long enough. I'm over it.
Okay.
But contemporary dance, it's I feel like it's something that audience members almost have to see.
Okay.
But if I were to try to explain it, it's based in ballet. It's based in forms of moving indigenous dancing, African dancing, like it folk dancing. It has all of those roots. If we think of like pioneers of contemporary dance, like Martha Graham, Jose Limon, Maud Allen, Isadora Duncan, Ted Shawn, they all started in ballet, like as in that training. And specifically with Martha Graham, I think she just really wanted something more rather than telling old stories. So in ballet, it's all classical ballet, story ballet. So you have Giselle, you have Sleeping Beauty. It's always it's ethereal. Ballet started as kings and queens and yada yada, mainly kings, really. And then when women got involved, it was like, oh, now we want to make you look like you're floating and you're ethereal, and so we'll put you on point shoes. And so that was the reason why women started dancing on point. Was to make them look like they were floating. And light and ethereal and sylph-like. And there's lots of death in ballets. Like, lots of women are dying all the time. Swan Lakes. Giselle, like, they're all dying. And then you go to the graveyard, and then there's a whole dance of the willies. And anyway. But I think that these contemporary dance, was actually called modern dance, pioneers they didn't want to be a floating ghost. They didn't want to be that woman So they started creating more. Martha Graham's syllabus that she created is very core centric. She does, things, the contraction, the high release, everything comes from the center as opposed to, and it's very grounded. The idea was to actually get back down because we spent so much time floating around on hard shoes.
Yeah.
Like, how do we get back down to the earth? And for many years, her company was only made up of women, and they didn't jump. They didn't elevate. Their elevation came from their high lift, from the releasing of their sternum, which came from their pelvis, which came from their core, to like lift them up to make them higher. But their feet were planted firmly on the ground. They weren't up on their toes. So it was this. She was giving this sort of this duality of like, we can still look like we're lifting or elevating without leaving the ground. But the purpose was to like really remain rooted. So modern dance really started a lot of that. But then there's Isadora Duncan, who kind of took it. She went to Europe, and she has she danced with scarves. Like that was what she did. She's American, but she ended up in Europe, and she just danced with scarves. But it was something that no one had ever seen before. And again, she didn't wear ballet shoes. She was flat on her feet. There wasn't any jumps there. She also went down onto the floor. So like seeing a body and going back to like how people get uncomfortable with seeing people dance. I think that's part of it, especially in contemporary dance. Like ballet dance, we can watch because we're elevated, because we're always standing up and we're always posing and poised. But in contemporary dance, we get down on the floor and it's uncomfortable, right? Because it also, it's almost like birth and death, like babies on the ground, people dying, we're on the ground, or we're in the earth, So I think that there's something with that,
interesting.
Yeah. So
is ballet, like ballet's obviously technical and regimented? Is that, I don't know if I should say obviously, but...
Yep, yeah.
So is like modern or contemporary dance kind of a pushback to some of that?
It's interesting because you would think it would be, but it can also, like Martha Graham has her own set syllabus, and it's technical, but in a very different way. I think, if I get into the weeds of this, but ballet, because we use turnout, so turnout of the hips and thighs, and you're standing in a fifth position with your one heel to your opposite big toe, and you're turning your legs out. The reason behind that was actually because you would never stand to your king with your back to the king. And the positions in ballet, like first, second, third, not third, but fourth and fifth, were actually, they're designed for, fencing. And then, so because back in the day, ballet kings and princes and all of the royal people would study fencing and ballet. They had a ballet master, and so ballet used those positions. In first position, it was like that was the stationary position, so you could do arm gestures. Second position, with your feet under your hips a little wider, you could move side to side. Fourth position, where you have one foot in front of the other and about a foot distance away, you can move forward and back. But in fifth position, with your heel to the big toe of the opposite foot, you can move in any direction.
Yeah.
I know. I just totally gave you like a whole ballet lesson. So
I can kind of picture just from the little bit of ballet I've seen on TV or whatever, I can see them standing in these ways. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But if you think of fencing, they always stand in second position, and they go sideways this way, and then they'll go into fourth to go forward and back. Yeah. I had a little boy this year in one of my classes, and he said, my big brother does fencing, and he said, he keeps showing me fourth position. Does it look like this? Is this what fourth? And I said, yes, and that's also a ballet position. And I had to tell him that, fencing and ballet were, that's what all the royalty did back in the day. And he was, shocked.
Wow.
Like, what?
That's really fascinating.
Trying to keep boys in ballet. That's my tool.
Yeah, ballet is the same thing as sword fighting.
It's cool. It's cool, just like sword fighting.
Yeah, that's cool. That seems cool to me. I would never have put the two together. I mean, I wouldn't have thought fencing and ballet is connected.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you say ballet originally was like a male practice, or
it was a male dominated. Yes,
okay.
yeah. So the Sun King, Louis XIV, there were people before him, obviously, but there was a lot of folk dancing, right, which was like couples and whatnot. But then when Louis XIV kind of found ballet or whatever, along with his fencing, he wanted just dances for himself, and women were too weak. Like they weren't even allowed to show their ankles or wrists, or, you know what I mean? So
yeah, of course.
And men even at that time still weren't really jumping, so they weren't elevating, but they had like postures and specific things. So it was, fencing and ballet really were kind of the same, like sword dancing.
Okay.
Like it was, so you'd practice your ballet to make you stronger for your fencing, and yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's fascinating.
Isn't that cool?
That's really neat.
I think that's really neat.
That's really neat.
Yeah. I love the history of all those things.
Oh yeah. That's super fascinating. I'm going to be thinking about this for a while. Well, it's almost 3:00. We've been here for an hour.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Awesome.
So I really appreciate you coming on the show again, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'd love to do it again too later on. And hopefully I'll get to check out some of the festival.
Yes. I hope you do. Yeah. Please come and I think you'll enjoy it.
And maybe I'll finish with one more question, just that I have written down here.
Yeah, sure.
What would you say to those listening who are curious about exploring authentic movement or contemporary dance, but are perhaps scared of embarrassing themselves or being judged or just nervous? Yeah,
it is. It's. I always say when students come to take their first classes, I get it. I understand. And I always commend them for being brave, for stepping in but it's just the act of stepping in. And once you're there, because you quickly realize that you're there with other people just like you, who have never done this before. And that the environment is very safe, and that the instructors are there to facilitate and to guide you and to support you, really to support you. We have such a beautiful adult dance community at First City School of Dance, and by and Connection Dance Works. Even before First City started, we always had adult engagement of non-dancers, and I think it's taking the chance, taking the risk to do it, but recognizing that when you get there, you're going to be surrounded by people who fully support you, because they're also supporting themselves. So there's like a beautiful reciprocity of people supporting one another in their movement journey, in being able to move together. And just, last night I had my final wellness workshop, and two people were talking afterward and discovered that they're both artists, and they both were, they were sharing like photographs of their work on their phones with each other after class. Cool. So it's like, friendships come out of it. And sometimes as adults we're like, oh, I don't have any friends anymore, like I only made friends years ago, I don't make them now. And it's such a beautiful way to share something that, that brings really great joy. And then to share it with other people who also really appreciate and respect what, that you've also taken this risk and are being brave to step into the studio. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And personal growth awaits.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's very cool. So it sounds like the hardest part is probably showing up for the first time.
Yep,
and then you just kind of roll into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is. I always commend people for like just that first class. I'm like, you made it here. I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Sarah. I really appreciate you taking the time to swing by.
Awesome.
And hopefully it's a great festival and a great summer.
Thanks.
And we'll do this again.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.